all right. Good evening. And good afternoon, I should say, because the episode gonna come out in the afternoon time. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
Um,
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Welcome to another episode of Talk the Ting. But this is a special episode. This is a different type of episode. Um,
Right.
we this is our first pre-recorded episode, not live. So, for the people who are Talk the Ting viewers and listeners on, as you guys can see, Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, shameless plug. Um, you guys can check us out there. We're gonna be talking a little bit tonight about motherhood. And the conversation is gonna go very much into different generations of moms and some of the changes we've seen over the years. So we'll get into that. Before we go any further, we want to introduce our host, our co-host, Ellen.
Me. Hi guys, it's me again. Before we go any further than that, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers viewing today, from wherever you are in the world, from whatever generation you're viewing from. Welcome back to another Talk Meeting session, and we hope you had a blessed day. And yeah, we can move from there now, Dwayne.
All right, all right. So with that said, I guess I'll start with some introductions. So I guess let's start with Shoya.
Oh,
Can you
hi.
just give a little introduction about yourself and and
Oh gosh, I hate introductions. Hi, I'm Shoya. I am Jamaican living in Dominica. I am married. I have so many children.
Right, right.
So many children, right? So my immediate home consists of like three children, uh, a young adult, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. Um, and they take up like majority of my time outside of work, right? I also work. I'm a clinical psychologist and a lecturer, and I do many other things too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just a life enthusiast, loving it, living up life, and all of them kind of things. And it's really a pleasure to be here with you guys
Thank,
today.
thank you, Shaya.
Mhm.
All right, thank you, Shoya. Joanne, go ahead.
So, hi everyone, my name is Joan. I am currently from Dominica, living in the US. I am a proud mom of two boys, 8-year old and 2 years old. Like Shoya, I'm a working mom. I am the dean at an institution here in the United States.
Mm,
All
nice.
right, all right. Thanks for coming on, Joanne. And last but not least, Mrs. Jude.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I am Natalie Jude. I am a teacher by profession. Right now, my focus is on special education. I work with autistic kids in a self-contained classroom. I have 4 kids of my own, ages ranging between 37 to 27 years old, somewhere around there. 3 grandchildren, ages ranging from a month to almost 6 years. So I have 2 grandsons, 1 granddaughter, and I am super proud of them. Um, I am married for many years, and like Shoya, I can say that I have lots of children, although those are my biological children, but I have been in the field of education from the age of 19. So I have mature children. Um, in essence, that's who I am.
Oh my God. Thank you, guys.
All right, the only comment I'll make there is, for those who don't know, Napoli Jude is my mother, and she doesn't know my age because I'm 38.
Just
Don't blame her. You had a recent birthday, that's why she
You,
cannot.
Yeah.
you know, I try to keep his age, and then he put it out there.
right.
Yeah, man. But I guess okay. Thanks everyone for joining. So let's get a little bit into the conversation. I guess each of you guys mentioned kids and
Working.
you guys working. Um, and that, I guess that goes into the first question that we have, right? So I'm going to reverse order. So, Mrs. Jude, how do you balance being a working mom? And what are some of the challenges, I guess, pros and cons that come with that?
Okay. Right now I'm not balancing. Right now, my kids are all grown, as you heard, and I help out with my grandchildren here and there. But when my kids were little, it was very, very challenging. As I
Mm.
said, I have always been working from my, let's say, early adulthood, from 19. And I by that time I had my first son, and I had to basically grow, like forget about being a teenager and just grow up.
Mm.
And in growing up, it meant that I had to put the needs of my child ahead of mine. And then later on, when the others came, the same pattern continued. Um, as challenging as it was, I would not exchange it for anything right now. As I look back on my children, as I see where they're heading, how they're heading, I am happy that I basically put my own life on pause, because really and truly, when you become a mother, this is what needs to it almost immediately happen, because you're no longer living for yourself. You're living for the little people that you have brought into the world. And it can be very challenging, to the point that, yes, there were days when I sat and cried. There were days when I said, I cannot cope, I cannot make it, I need help. But I survived. So it is very challenging to have to think about it. You're a teacher, you have to do lesson plans, you have to correct papers, you have to, basically be on the roll all the time. And then later on, when I started getting more and more responsibilities like assistant principal, deputy principal, and all of these things, the workload became more, but my children were not taken from me. So I had to find myself becoming super organized. You have to be super organized and basically throw procrastination out of the window. Cry if you have to, but at the end of the day, you just have to keep pushing forward.
So I have a question, Natalie. So Shoya, as she mentioned, is a clinical psychologist, so mental health is her thing. That's right up her field. And I feel like in today's day and age, you have an increase in awareness of mental health and gentle parenting and all these things. So I'd like to hear your perspective and Shoya's as well, and of course Joanne. Being a young mother at that point in time, without Instagram and the social media therapists and therapy being a thing, you said that there were some days that you cried. How do you feel about, how should I say, the accessibility to mental health now? Would you say that newer mothers are probably a bit more, for lack of a better word, softer compared to mothers like you who had to cope without that much support? And then I'd be interested to hear how people like Shoya feel being a mother in this generation where everybody is a psychologist, so to speak, or mental health advocate.
Well, for me, mental health is a big thing, because my master's is in counseling. I have a master's in counseling. And from way back, as I said, when I had my first boy, I recognized the need for some type of support.
Right.
And although it was not readily available on island, I can give credit to programs like Focus on the Family with James Dobson, who is a psychologist. So this is one area that I found support. I would
Mm-hmm.
listen to his programs, and I would also order his books. So
Hmm.
in terms of raising my child, I got books like Mothers Raising Sons, because at that time I wasn't married, I was single, and I had to raise Dwayne. So I needed to figure out how to go about doing it. I got books like When Mothers Cry, or Not Screaming at Your Children, and stuff like this. So I had that type of support. But in spite of having that type of support, I also had what I would call a church family.
Mm.
So I didn't have, let's say, a counselor on island or a therapist on island, but I had a church family and I had extended family. My mother was there, my siblings. And there were days when, at that time, with my first boy, when I felt my world was falling apart, there was always somebody who would step in. So, for example, when he was a baby, and I had those colicky nights when I cannot sleep because he's crying, I was thankful to have my mother, you know, who would jump in and take the child from me. When I started working, unlike now where you have less of the extended family and you have to come up with money to find a daycare, my mother was there,
Right.
so she took care of him. I went to work and I worked pretty close from to my home at the time, so I had that type of support.
Right.
um However, um how would I say that, as I started having more kids, the need for more support became even more apparent. At one point, my mother was not there. But as I said, I had a church family. I had people at my church who would help me, I could leave the child with them. If I had to run into town, I remember when I had Tammy, who is, by now I had two kids. I was married, but I had two children, and I had to go into town. I did not always have to carry them because there were people I could leave them with. So I want to say that that type of support is of extreme importance. I would not say young mothers of today are softer. It's just a different situation for them. They may have different types of support as to whether they gravitate to it and they access it. I don't know, but it's just a different thing. But
Right.
motherhood then was challenging, and motherhood now is still challenging.
Challenging in its own way.
Yeah.
Shreya, what do you think from a professional point of view?
Like, I think I agree totally with Miss Jude, right? Um, I think there might not have been as much access to professional psychological support, but they had balance in terms of, like, what we've lost now is the village, right? So we don't have a village. So most of us, we move to somewhere. If we're on our own, we're on our own. If it's us and our own or little family, it's our little family. So we don't have the kind of village that we grew up seeing. So, with the auntie there and the granny there and the this there, and there's a lot of people around there. So while again therapy wasn't as readily available, social support might be even more important than therapy sometimes, raising children. Because if you're talking about colicky nights, like, you really, therapy can't do nothing for you at that point in time.
Exactly.
Right? You want somebody that can say, you know what, you had a rough night, let me take the baby for the day and you can sleep,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of us, we don't have that. So we have the added task of now creating our own village, right? So that is just, as Miss Jude said, a shift in society, in generation. um,
Right.
that makes it a little harder for us. I don't know about the gentle parenting business, right? Um, I do practice a different kind of parenting than what is traditionally known as, like, normal Caribbean parenting. But I don't think that there's anything gentle about my parenting, right? So it's more of being firm but loving, you know and some aspects of gentle parenting might not necessarily be what I agree with, right? And there is just a lot of shift in terms of the generation. But in terms of access to mental health, well, I think that back then we had a lot of the village, and we do have the village now. We still need mental health care. Like, we still need professionals to help us deal with our stuff, because first of all, there's absolutely nothing wrong with our children, right? But a lot of times we don't have the capacity to deal with them. So sometimes we bring over stuff, sometimes we have unresolved stuff, sometimes we're not able to function because we're at capacity,
Mm,
those kind of things. So like teaching us to regulate, to understand, to deal with our stuff, to not necessarily parent in the same way that we were parented.
right, right.
We need some professional help in that wise, but nothing really beats social support, which
Right.
you now have to pay sometimes. Yeah.
Right. So on that point, Joanne, to tie you into everything, you said you're from Dominica but living overseas. And I always wonder for people who are Dominican born from Dominica, what's it like raising your children in the States? Because that's a whole different ball game. And like Shoya mentioned, having your support team or even creating your own support system. What has that been like?
So definitely it's different. And I think something very important that Shoya said, that the mental health and having access to it is very important. But sometimes having that village is even more important. And I think for a lot of us who are here, we don't have our extended family. And I think sometimes, even though you have your extended family, everyone is on their own hustle. So everyone is working. But I think something that you mentioned, which has definitely worked to my advantage, you create your own village. Because I think that saying is true. No one is an island. No one stands on their own. And sometimes your village is not only your husband, your boyfriend, your spouse, your partner, whatever it is. Your village is more than that. So I think I was very fortunate to have people that kind of assisted me. And that village is not only for childcare, or I'll babysit for you, but
Mm,
that village is pretty much that person that would pull you aside to be like, are you okay? That village is that person who will kind of pretty much give you instructions or advice, because everything is a little bit different here. And I always tell people, I can always remember at my place of work when I got pregnant,
mm,
one of the deans of the academic program, she kind of pulled me aside and she's like, I have one advice for you. She's like, I know that you're going to be exhausted. I know that you're going to be tired, but every single night, I need you to read to the baby. And I think that's something that I never forgot. And I think because of that, that's why my son loves reading so much.
mm,
Because while he was in my stomach, I would read to him. From the time that he was a baby, I would read to him. And I feel also I was fortunate enough to call someone when I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing.
mm,
I always say there's no manual to parenthood. And then there are certain times that you just question yourself, am I doing it right, or am I breaking the child? So my son's mother was someone that I met here, that I grew a relationship with, who was a mom already. So kind of
mhm,
just taking advice. And of course, you're not going to take every advice because everyone has to do what works for them. But
mhm.
I built my own village, being that I didn't really have family members here. And
Right.
that worked to my advantage.
Okay.
Man, that's that. You guys put in a lot of gems there. I think thinking about especially what Joanne just mentioned about creating your own village. Um, I could see a difference, right? Even within the three of you guys, right? So my mother basically raised her kids, all her kids in Dominica. Um, Shoya is Jamaican, but raising her kids in Dominica.
Really.
Current, but I guess if we go back a little bit, my mother raised her kids in Dominica, but that was years ago.
Yeah.
And then Shoya is now raising kids in Dominica.
Right.
And then Joanne now is in the US. And I guess just to pivot a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about the values and stuff that you guys
Mhm.
like, what you guys think is important. And is there a difference between what we teach our kids in the Caribbean, or more specifically Dominica, and what we teach them in the US, right? And Joy, I'm gonna start with you because you made a comment and you said that you about the gender parenting, you don't necessarily agree with that, but I guess whatever you think is the best way to raise your kids, how does that tie into the value system that you teach your kids? And also thinking about how they're gonna take that with them as they get older.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of aspects of gender parenting that I think is so credible, right? So like I am not in the beating the child, right? I am not in the like I try my best not to shout, but Jesus, I shout every day. Okay, let me tell you, right? Let me tell you, to the point where like I try to apologize. So one of my principles is like teaching my children ownership of their emotions. So one of my general principles is emotional intelligence.
Mm.
Right? Teaching them to understand their emotions, because like I believe that just like we teach children academia, we should teach them about their emotional states and stuff like that, which I feel like we should get a little bit more of that from the US and the other more developed countries and insert it, because like a lot of us as Caribbean people, unless you're in psychology, unless you're like, I love the books that Miss Jude spoke about, right? But unless you're in that kind of field, a lot of people don't think that parenting requires any kind of training, any kind of learning, any kind of, like, and nothing has made me learn more, research more, into podcasts more than
Mm.
parenting, right? Because you learn so much, and there is a whole world outside of what you would have grown and you would have known, right? So like a big value is emotional intelligence. So I would teach my children ownership of their emotions too. So like I tell you, I like shout all the time. So when I shout, I apologize, which is another principle. I always apologize, right? I do it so much to the point where the last time I shouted at my son, I'm just like, come here, Shalon. He's like, you sorry you shouted at me? Right? Yeah, so like a big part is the apology part. That's huge for me. Um, what else? I have some core principles. Like, for example, I think it's a big thing for me to raise my children for the future, not just for the present. You
That's fine.
understand? That's a big thing. So, okay, like just normal example, you'll see a child in the supermarket throwing a tantrum,
Mhm.
right? Um, and the normal Caribbean thing is to probably hit them, to probably, so you start feeling a lot of shame because everybody looking at
Mhm.
the
About
child.
that, yep, yep. Mhm.
So, like in a lot of things, what I do is I look at where I want my child to be in the future and what skills can I teach them. So for example, they're in the supermarket, they're throwing a tantrum. What we want to do is to teach them not to do that in the supermarket. So before we go, we tell them, listen, I go into the supermarket, I don't have nothing to
Nothing.
do,
Don't touch nothing. Don't watch nothing.
don't
Don't
watch
prepare.
nothing,
Don't ask.
don't ask for nothing. Essentially, we're teaching them that they should voice their wants and their desires. You understand? And so, like, those things can be cemented. So now I'm
Mm.
when my child is 35, walking through the aisles of life, right? Do I want them to be able to say, I want this? Right? Do I
Mm.
want them to be able to voice their concerns and their desires? I do. So it's not just for in the moment. So what do I then do? I teach them skills that they need, right? Which is, I know you want something. I'm not going to give you this because it's not good for you. If you
Mhm.
cry, I'm still not going to give it to you, right? I'm not going to give you a sweet. I can give you a fruit bowl,
Mhm.
right? And you can cry from now until tomorrow morning. I am going to give you a fruit bowl, and you're not going to get that, right? But you know what? You can ask me all you want. Ask, baby. Ask, 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 because I don't want you to ever stop asking through life,
Mm.
okay? But the thing is, I am firm on what you get and what you don't get. I'm not
Mm.
going to shut down your need and shut down your desires and tell you don't have a voice. So I'm big on them having a voice. That's why I'm saying, like, I think a lot of the parenting strategies that I use are not necessarily Caribbean strategies,
Mm.
because I'm a psychologist who is dealing with people who are living with the repercussions of Caribbean
Okay.
parents.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
You
yes, yes,
understand? Right?
yes,
People who are adults and they still don't know how to say, I want something.
yes.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
People who are adults and they still don't know how to say no, or they still don't know how to navigate certain things, and we don't understand that these skills are learned very early. So instead of a lot of punishing and a lot of learning to do things through fear and whatever, I my another value that I have is teaching skills, because they don't have the skills. They don't
Mm.
to navigate their emotions yet teach them
Right.
how to navigate their emotions. They don't have the skills to tolerate frustration. You teach them how to tolerate frustration. So like, it's about, are we parenting for now? Because what we want to see is my child sit down in church and they sit down and they're not saying nothing, right?
Yeah.
So everybody's saying that's a well-behaved child.
Mm.
But I don't want a child who sit through life not saying nothing.
Right.
You
Yep.
understand?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
so that's where I parent from, which is, I'm pretty firm. Like, I will tell you, if you jump on the couch, I'm gonna take you down. I will tell you, my job, baby, is not to make you happy. Okay? I think one of that was your questions, Auntie. Like, my
Yeah.
job is not necessarily to make you happy. My job is to keep you safe. My job
Mhm.
is to keep you healthy. My job is to, so you can be unhappy. That's okay. Right? You can tell me you're unhappy. That's okay. Right? But my job is to keep you safe in that moment. That is why I'm saying, like, the gentle thing where it's always soft and it's always like, that is not necessarily my approach to it. It's more of like a firm thing. But then children feel heard and validated and all of those kind of things, which is not what is typically done in our culture. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very well put together answer. I'm gonna give an opportunity for Joe and my mother to jump in here, but I just remember, and people might say saying these things are because it's my mother, but I remember specifically some of these conversations with my mother when I was growing up, right? One story I remember quickly before you guys answer that question was I can't remember what I did. First of all, when I was a kid, I used to like plenty. And I still like now, but I used to like plenty. And one time I did something and I came home and my mother goes, um, you did such and such and such. And I say, no, I didn't. And she say, well, Dwayne, I know you did it. So if you lie, she said, I'm gonna beat you regardless. Right? But so I tell her, but mommy, you always say the truth and set you free. Like they always used to say that the truth and set you free. And then she tell me, and then I never forget that. That's what my mother explained to me. The truth and set you free had nothing to do with the punishment, right? It had
Mm.
everything to do with your mind, right? Your conscience. Because she said, well, if you decide tomorrow to go take a knife and stab somebody and kill them, yeah, you can go in court and tell the judge, yeah, I stabbed the person, but that you will still go to prison.
Right.
Right. So I never forget those things. So I commend you for that. For what you said. In terms of expressing. And I know that I'm a father. This is not a Father's Day, but now that I'm a father, I'm hearing certain things that I am possibly doing with my son because he does that. Right. He asks me for things a million times, and I say, "Kai, stop asking me. I told you no already." Right.
Mm.
But to be honest, the other day I say, why do I keep telling him to stop asking me? Right. And now that you're saying that, it almost kind of reinforces it in my mind. So, I commend you for that. But I guess Joanne, you could jump in there, and then Mrs. June.
Yeah. So I think raising Caribbean, what I try to do, I always tell people one of the best courses I took when I did my undergrad was Intro to Psychology. And I honestly had one of the best professors ever. And even still until this day, we keep in contact. That's how impactful he was to me. So I think doing psychology taught me a lot of the things that worked in my advantage. Um, and then the things that didn't, that's how I try to kind of parent. So I think one of the most important thing that you said, I want my kids to express themselves. And I think growing up, something that they always told us, oh, don't answer back.
Yep.
Don't
Mm.
ask questions.
Yep.
So because I know the effects it had on me, I try to undo it in my child or children. So like we from the time that, well, my second is 2 and my first is 8, from the time that he was able to understand, which honestly is from day one, I explained certain things to him because they know, like, I never did like the whole baby in talk or whatever. And I think something that's very important, as you said, I never want someone to take advantage of them. So, like in my mind, if you go to that job interview and you know that you're with $200,000, I don't want you to not have the power and keep in your mind that you can't ask for that and just settle for what you're not worth. So that's always my thing in terms of like, I need you to understand, I need you to express yourself. And I think, unfortunately, Caribbean people, when kids express themselves in a respectful way, they see it as disrespectful because of the way that we were brought up. You're not supposed to, ask adults certain questions. You're not supposed to answer back. But honestly, the child is just being curious and trying to find out. It's not that they're trying to be disrespectful. So, like, even with my son, certain people, I have to explain that to them and be like, no, he's not disrespectful. He's just expressing himself. I don't believe in the gentle parenting. I stand firm, so I make one of the things that I make my sons understand. You cannot have it all. So even though yes, I'm able to provide it for you, I don't want you growing up with the mentality that you're always going to get what you want, because life doesn't work that way. And I don't want them to be entitled. I want them to know that the things that we're providing for you, we are working for it. And sometimes we may have it and sometimes we may not have it. So I know that, their parents, and everyone parents the way that they think works best for them. And I know there are parents that's like, no, no matter what, I want my kid to have the life that I didn't. So no matter what they ask for, I'm going to give them. I'm not that type of person, because I feel like I need you to understand that life doesn't work that way. I don't want you growing up with an entitled mentality. So yes, I can give you that new shoe, I can give you that new whatever you want, but what's wrong with the one that you have right now?
Yep.
So that's just the way that I do it. Like everyone do it differently. But like as I said, I really tried the things that I know that wasn't in my advantage. That's my main focus with them, to kind of, so that they won't be affected the way that I was.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. I like them gems I hearing so far, but all your children sound like they're gonna raise up nice, Hey, Mrs. Jude, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know how
would
your
wa-
children raise up, by the way. I don't know how they raise up them
I,
children. Go
I
ahead.
I would say that I had two phases of raising my children. From the very beginning, maybe from 0 to about 10, 11, 12 years, my first two children were raised in one particular way. The Caribbean way, the beating way, you have to go walk the straight and narrow. You don't do it, you get a beating. You
The
don't do
first, the
that,
first one.
you get a you get a punishment. But I am thankful. As I said, I went out on my own to seek, to learn, to grow, so that I could, as Joanne said, raise my children in such a way that they were not affected how I was affected.
Right.
And so for the second part of it, and my other two boys, they were raised kind of, um, I wouldn't say softer, but I became more sensitive. I would say I became more sensitive to them and to their needs and how I did things, as opposed to, it's I say jump and you jump. That was it for the first for the first two children. The second portion of it, the second period of it, I became more of the type of parent who would listen to them, who would allow them to speak. And while we may look at gentle parenting, sometimes we think of just the negative or the disadvantages of it. But when we think of gentle parenting, we think of setting healthy boundaries, which is what Shoya spoke about, which is what Joanne spoke about. You set boundaries for them. You give them healthy boundaries. You allow them to understand that there are natural consequences, right? There are natural consequences, and the consequence was is not always or should not even be beating them. The Caribbean way is beating them. but they have to learn that there are natural consequences to their behaviors. So right now we are in the age of technology and the children have iPads and tablets and whatever. A simple consequence would be something like, okay, you don't want to do your homework, you're not doing well at school, so the tablet is taken from you, right? And the tablet is not taken for an eternity, it's taken for a short period of time, maybe a day, maybe 2 days, until they get an understanding that if you do X, you get Y. If you do Y, you get W. So there are natural consequences. Most importantly, though, is I think, as I said, the second phase of raising my children, even the two older ones, I got to a place where I understood that they are human beings, they are people. They are little, but they are people. And they have to be respected the same way an adult has to be respected. They
Mm-hmm.
have to be treated with care, and we have to extend grace to them. When we do, it's okay for us to say sorry and we want them to
Right.
accept our sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But when they do, we don't even give them a chance to say sorry. And
Like,
sometimes, even though they say sorry, we say sorry not curing. Sorry doesn't fix, sorry doesn't cure. And then we are quick to punish them. So it's about setting healthy boundaries. It's about letting natural consequences take its toll.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to see their children hurt.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to see them cry. But as Shoya said, sometimes you have to cry.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I say to Kai, who is my grandson, I said, Kai, grandma, there's a lot of things grandma wants, but I cannot have it.
Mhm.
And this is life. In real life, you will not always, Joan said it too, you will not always get everything, and it's okay. You know, um, my children say that I love my grandchildren more than I loved them. That is not necessarily the case. I have grown, so certain things, certain things I would not let slide with my own children. I have learned now to let it slide with my grandchildren. For
the
example,
grandparents are always softer with them.
now, for example, I would make my children eat whatever I prepare. And I would say, I don't have a restaurant. So if I give you oats, you eat
Yes.
oats, right? I have come to the realization that they have choices,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yes.
and 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 it's okay to give them choices rather than commands. You eat this whether you want it or not. If you don't want it, slip
Yeah.
by,
Mhm.
right? But in reality, even as adults, there are things we don't want,
Mhm.
right? And we don't want people to push it down our throats. So we have to give them that same type of grace. The child
Right.
doesn't like oats. So why force
Yeah.
them to eat? Yeah, why force them to eat oats? So give them choices, and rather than command, and understanding, as I said earlier on, that they are people. So
Mhm.
yes, I had the first years of raising my children. I used a lot of the Caribbean way, the Dominica way, the beating way, the shouting way, the embarrassing way, the sit down. I tell you, sit down, full stop,
Mm.
right? But
Mhm.
as I grow, especially as I went on to study, I went to school,
Yes.
I started doing psychology, I started doing counseling and different things like that. I learned, and I thank God that I was able to use what I learned and implement it in the life of my children, that I was able to make a shift. I was able to make a turn. And so Dwayne and Tamika got a little rougher part of me, but
Yeah.
the others, the other two, and my grandchildren got the more understanding part of me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with a lot of what you say, but the Dwayne and Tamika, I think it's just Dwayne for the most part. Tamika
Oh
still had
boy,
soft.
sorry,
Tamika still had
sorry.
soft life, soft life,
But
soft life.
on that point, Natalie, it's very interesting because I always, for lack of a better word, complain about that when it comes to my siblings and I, where my parents had me a little bit older. So kind of in the reverse, my parents had me in their 40s. They had my siblings when their marriage was kind of fresh. And I always say for a long time, probably this year I made the realization, like, why are my siblings so spoiled? Like they're the older ones. Why are they so whatever I want, I get? But it's because they had younger parents that were happy to have their first children. My parents had a bit more time, they had more energy. But I had parents who were senior parents. So I was a 10-year-old with parents in their 50s. And I feel like they reverted to how they were raised, especially my father. How they were raised. They got a lot more strict when it came to me. And it's because they didn't have the energy to chase me. They don't have the energy to beat me. They just don't have the energy for that. When they talk, just
Yes.
behave yourself. And that's that. And I find myself thinking about it a lot because although I'm young and I don't have children yet, I was raised by that standard of parenting. So my question is, what would you advise younger mothers or new mothers where we're growing up with iPad babies and the gentle parenting and the advice from everywhere? What would your advice be to younger parents, especially younger West Indian mothers, like doing it for the first time?
But Ellen, I want to say that it was. I don't even want to think it was that they didn't have the energy. Um, we talk about the change. For
Mm,
example, when I had my first child, one of my greatest fear, when I had him, I was 19, 20 years old. One of my greatest fear was to see that child turn out to be a vagabond,
mm,
to get to go into drugs, to go into, become a delinquent and whatever. So some of the things that I did back then was um, propelled by fear.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I would not allow him to go and play in the village with certain people or be out there for particular time because I was afraid that somebody would introduce him to drugs,
mm,
right? Um, I became a Christian when after I had him, I started going to evangelical churches. And so legalism, we have to go to church on Sunday. And that is
mm.
something he keeps telling me. I prevented him from becoming a this cricket because when he was still a kid, I did not allow him to go and play on a Sunday,
Sunday.
right? So a lot of those things sometimes is it's not even so much what you want to do, but the society around you. The
Mm-hmm.
society around you influence how you deal with your children. So it may well be at the time that your parents began to see a shift in society, a change in society,
Yeah.
where young people in your age group were just going wild, and so they just
Mm-hmm.
tighten the belts around you because they don't want you to go astray. It could also be that your personality is different. You are the strong-willed one.
You
You
knew
are
me.
the
That's why you're saying that. You know me. That's why you're saying that.
right. You are the
Before
strong-willed
we go
one.
any further, hold on, man. Before we go any further, we have another guest who's gonna join us. She's on a little late, but I'm just gonna bring her into the conversation. Um, Good evening, Mrs. Coffee Wicks. How are you?
Good evening. I'm alive and well. Good evening to the mothers in the house.
Good
How are
Hi.
you
evening.
all doing?
Welcome
Hi,
again.
Okay.
Julia.
Welcome on board.
Good. Thank you.
So, Mrs. Wick, we were just talking about how sometimes parents have, I would say, a shift in personality or a shift in parenting style at different points in their parenting. So Natalie was just speaking on that a bit. You can continue, Natalie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
is
So I
very
was
true, eh?
okay. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was
Go ahead,
saying
Natalie.
sometimes it's the whole environment around you. As I said, I was raised in a particular way. I mean, now that I can look back on it, and I don't fault my parents because I know they meant well. All
Right.
right, they meant well, but that doesn't mean it did not negatively impact me.
Yes.
All right, some things negatively impacted me, and because this is what I knew and I thought that this was the way to go. As we said, there's no manual on raising children. I use that same method with my children. Fortunately for me, I started learning, I started listening, I started reading, and then I started implementing new things. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I had a baby, a child to raise now, like I have to work with my grandchildren, I will not raise them up the way that my first group of children were raised. So, for example, when I became principal at an elementary school back home, I was quick to tell the teachers, "We're not beating kids. We're not beating kids. Get rid of the whip. Let's talk to them." I remember one of my teachers used to say to me, Miss, you and your counseling thing. You and your counseling
Mm-hmm.
thing. You're talking to the children too much. We have to make them feel. Now,
Mm.
this is something that we grow up thinking that to get children to do or to walk the straight and narrow, we have to beat up on them. But we are learning now that it's okay to have conversations with them. It's
Mhm.
okay to talk to them, and they do understand you. Right?
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I work with special needs kids. And in a society like the United States, no matter what, you cannot beat them.
Mm.
So if beating is the only consequence that we are using, then what would you do in a society like this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's a
The
matter of,
issue.
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, sure.
Sorry, but
Go ahead.
Miss Drew, the issue is that we see like good behavior as something that should change automatically,
Mhm.
right? So you talk to the child one time, and if you don't
Mm.
talk to them one time, then you have to let them feel you have to like we don't understand that like a lot of the skills that need to be learned over time.
Over
And you
time.
teach them
Mhm.
over and over, and you talk to them over and over and over. Just like in my son's, he's in kindergarten, he's 5, and for an entire term, they read Pip is sick, a storybook with about 4 pages, and each page had 1 or 2 lines. And they're learning to read, and every day they read that until they get it every day. And that is how we do with academia, but we don't do that with emotions, right?
Behaviors, yeah.
We don't do that with behaviors. So like
Mhm.
I've been teaching my son to relax, to calm down, to relax, to calm down for 5 years, right? And one day he was upset, and I'm looking for him and I couldn't find him. And he's outside. I'm like, "What you doing outside?" He's like, "I'm breathing out the anger." Listen, I could cry. It took me how long to teach him that, right? But then it's not like to beat him or whatever. So it doesn't come quick, but like it's really
Mm.
hard to be a mother in this generation if you're not parenting in the normal Caribbean way. Everybody think that your children spoil. Everybody think you and their modern day parenting, you and your this, you and your that, like, and there's a lot of critique, there's a lot of side eye, there's a lot of, so to go back to Ellen's question, like, what do I tell mothers? First thing I tell them to get therapy. Okay?
Mhm.
Get therapy. Like, I know time hard, I know whatever, but listen, this is worth the investment because a lot
Mhm.
of times we are struggling with our children because we don't
Mhm.
understand them,
True.
right? We don't understand them, and we don't understand their stage of development, and we don't know what their brain is doing at a specific time. Many times you look at a child that is 2 or 3 and you tell them, go and do that, go and do that, and they're not doing it, and you're screaming at them, you're not
Yeah.
listening, da, 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 da. But if you understand them, you understand at 2 and 3, they don't have the capacity to pay attention to 2 things at the same time. And if they're paying
Mhm.
attention to the toy, it's not that they're being disobedient, they're not even hearing you,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
you just say, hey, look at me. Ellen, look at me. Go put away your toy. Ellen looks at you, go put away your toy. Finish. But you're there
Mhm.
screaming and shouting and nah, 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 all of them kind of things. When you don't understand
Mhm.
the stages they're at, when they have their why questions, when they have their no, when they're defiant, and then how to
Mhm.
regulate the stages. And we think we have bad children. We think we have
Yeah.
disobedient. We start labeling them. And then the self-fulfilling prophecy comes in. When that child is called a certain thing all the time, then they start to behave in that way.
Mhm.
If I should tell mothers something, I would tell them no matter where you are, get help so you can deal with your issues and so you can
Mhm.
understand your
Mhm.
child.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
don't be afraid to parent differently. Don't watch people
Mhm.
and thing because people have a lot to say.
Mhm.
And what we're trying to do is we understand that the only natural thing that comes in parenting is how we were parented.
Mhm.
If we
Mhm.
want to do
Mhm.
it differently, we have to learn to do it differently. We have to put
Yeah.
effort into doing it differently,
Exactly.
and we have to create different outcomes for our children because we are now living with the repercussions of
Mhm.
what it's like to be raised without any kind of understanding of where we are or the fact that we have emotions.
Mhm.
Mm.
So Joanne, give us your thoughts on that, and we'll go to Mrs. Weeks.
I would say don't lose yourself. Don't
Mm.
lose yourself. Um, I think this new generation of moms, we are so caught up in fighting the trauma so that we don't pass it down to our kids. So we
Mm-hmm.
are trying to be super moms. Um, we're working, and being on the job has its own, stress. We are married, so we're still trying to balance that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We are still trying to balance being the daughter, the sister,
Mm.
and all of that. And sometimes we lose ourselves. We always think that, well, not me, 7 days a week, you have to cook. The
Mm.
clothes has to be ironed. You have to wash at a certain time. Um, but like as I said, don't lose yourself, because yes, you need to take care of them. But I always say, if you're not good, they're
Yeah.
not good, because they know, and they'll ask you, "Are you okay?" Because sometimes I randomly get it.
Mm.
Mm.
Are you okay? So take care of yourself. Don't lose yourself. Don't lose yourself. That would be my advice.
Okay, okay, okay. Mrs. Weeks, what are your thoughts on the conversation so far? And before you go into that, you could just, if you would just give a little introduction on yourself and let the people know a little bit about you, and then you could go ahead into your thoughts on the discussion.
Okay, so I am Delia Coffee Weeks, originally from Grand Bay. I have always said to everybody, you can take me out of Grand Bay, but you can't take Grand Bay out of me. I am actually a product of my environment,
Mm.
and who I am today has a lot to do with the way that I was brought up, and how I parent is also based on how I was brought up.
Mhm.
Had two parents with different parenting styles.
Mm.
Mm.
One was the strict disciplinarian who would beat you to within an inch of your life. I'm
Mm.
not going to say who was what, but I'm just saying I had one parent
Mm.
who would beat for everything,
Mm.
all in an effort to keep us on the straight and narrow. It was difficult for that parent because there were 10 of us.
Mm.
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 And you can imagine 10 energetic, sometimes disgusting children. Well, not me, I was never disgusting, in a small space.
Mhm.
So things happened. The other parent, thankfully, was the one who would put you to sit down and try to reason with you and embarrass you to within an inch of your life.
Mm.
And honestly, in terms of correction, I must say I preferred the beating because the beating would hurt and then it would finish.
Yeah.
But the embarrassment
Mhm.
of the reasoning and trying to make you see why you
Mm.
should not have done whatever. For me, that was like cutting deeper into my soul. And strangely, that is the attitude that I adopted when I became a parent myself.
Mm.
Mm.
So I'm not a bitter. I will say, because I was brought up in a particular way, I am one of those parents who will not stay away from beating if I think at the point in time this is what you need. But my son is 42 years old and he tells you, my mom only ever beat me once.
Mm.
So that's to tell you there's a time and a place for everything.
Mm.
And I have found that different children require different things.
Mm-hmm.
So some children, you will speak to them and it works. Some children, you can speak to them till the cows come home unless they feel something,
Mm.
Mm.
they will not react. So you have to learn your children, and there are some basic things that I say to parents. You need to set your ground rule and let children know where you're coming from, regardless of what age they are. When you let them know this is how we're going to do things, because for me, raising children is almost like having a contract. At least that is how I did it with my son. I was a very young mom.
Mm.
I was abandoned by the person who loved me so much until he impregnated me.
Mm.
But as we say in Dominica, fam say go wash. For Shoyage, women are big stone, the place of safety. So I had to do what I had to do to make sure that everything worked out well. All of the stress and the struggle was mine, but when things were nice and dandy, it was the non existent daddy who got the praise.
Mm.
But you understand that children live in their own little bubble, they do what they have to do, and you have to work around it.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever happens, we should not traumatize our children because of what we have been through.
Mm.
So, as mothers, many times we have to stop. And even when we look at dealing with our children, we need to sometimes give our children those things that we yearned for that we did not get. Because if as adults we are still saying, oh, I wish my mom had hugged me enough, or when we look at movies or we see other families and we see the interaction and the hugging and the kissing and so on, and we're like, oh boy, I wish I had that, then we need to make a conscious effort to ensure that our children don't walk the path that we walked. While we're doing that, I caution parents about going to the extreme, because sometimes we deny our children certain fundamental things because we think, oh, I drank too much bush tea as a child because we lived in poverty, so I'm not giving my children bush tea. But sometimes we need to look back and see, even at our particular stage, the things that we yearned for were not necessarily better for us.
Mm.
And we need to ensure that our children remain grounded, because some things I say to people, look, I may appear to be a progressive parent, but certain things you can see just how old school I am. And so when children are misbehaving and obviously seem to be the one in control, the fuse in my head, I lose it. I am being very honest. So when I see parents in public places and children throwing temper tantrums, and the mothers are sometimes reduced to tears because for some strange reason they don't do that around daddy. And I don't know why. But the
Mm.
mothers are reduced to tears and they're embarrassed and all of that. I lose it.
But
But
what do you think? What do you think? I guess to just transition. So before we go further, it's been about an hour we've been on, and I don't want to. I want to be
yes,
respectful of everybody's time. So I'm not trying to cut the conversation short, but
no, 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 you have to take control
if
of time.
yeah, yeah, but if anybody has to drop off or anything like that, you guys could let me know. But I kind of want to transition the conversation a little bit into the issue of technology, right, in 2025, and the impact of that on parenting, right? As again, I'm not a mother, right, but as a parent myself, right, that's also something that is a big part of, especially in American culture now, with tablets and all those that kind of things, phones and
Mm-hmm.
all those kind of things. So, what are you guys' thoughts? I guess, and I'll just preface it with saying I want to give everybody a chance to answer. So, just try and just keep your answers a little succinct if possible.
Right.
So, Mrs. Weeks, you could go ahead. What are your thoughts on technology? I guess when you were raising your kid, you said your son is 42, and obviously he's a grown man now. But what are your thoughts on that, and on technology, and what have you seen um, with that?
Well,
Mm-hmm.
for me, raising my child in terms of technology was not much of a stress because during the time he was a little boy, you were lucky if you had a flat screen TV, and the question of everybody having a cell phone was non existent.
Mhm.
In fact, when he got his first cell phone, he was already a student at the state college and he got a long speech before he got it. But I see parents now handing over their phones to babies to keep them from crying. And this really gets to me because I am like, number one, screen time and those little eyes, I don't think they're a perfect fit. So the question of having children totally absorbed in a tablet or a phone to allow you a moment's peace, that doesn't work. Yes, there are many programs on there to keep children occupied, but I think it has to do with spending time with your child. So watch something on television, or if you're watching it on a tablet, get them to interact, but not so much time to the point that you're speaking to them and they don't hear you because they're so engrossed in
Mhm.
whatever it is. The parent has to be in control at all times. So everything in moderation, and I'll hand over to the other parents to say what they think in terms of technology. You need to be in control of everything.
Fair enough.
Sure.
Joanne, go ahead. You didn't get to speak on the last question, so you could go ahead.
So I am not an iPad slash tablet mom. Um, Everything is in moderation. So it's not to say that they don't have one or I don't allow them to. It's just that we're not doing this for 2 hours. We're not doing this for 3 hours. The same thing that I said, like what impacted me, that's what I try to pass on. So let's spend some time together. Let's go outside to play. The weather is nice. Go outside to play, throw a ball. I do know that they do learn certain things from there, especially when it comes to, especially like the 2 year old, the callers, the ABC, because he's a big fan of Miss Rachel.
Mm.
Like as I said, everything is in moderation. I never raised them, and I think I was listening to a documentary on Netflix, and something that the guy said, we don't have lazy kids, we have lazy parents. And I know sometimes as parents, we do so much that giving them that phone, giving them that tablet means that you're not bothering me. But I never raised them up with like a tablet or like let's just watch television. So yes, they do, but it's the time is limited. We have the passwords, we have the time and everything. It's controlled because I also the internet can be a very scary place, and I also don't want them being exposed to certain things.
Mm.
Okay.
Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Um. Oh my God. Um. I
Tablets and screen time. Tablets and screen
tablets
time.
at screen time. Let me know how I feel about it. Okay. Right. So I totally agree with Joanne, like in moderation. Right. But I do think that certain things are age appropriate too. So I don't think babies under two should have screen time. Right? Not I don't think it's recommended that they don't have screen time. And like when they get to about 2 or so, you start giving them guided screen time, right? Where it's stuff that can, it's not just that the internet is a scary place, but even watching things that are seemingly safe
Mm.
isn't necessarily the best thing for their brain. and their brain is a lot more stimulated when they're interacting and when they're getting affection and when they're than when they're sitting down in front of a screen. What stimulated is the addiction center of their brain when they're,
Mm.
even if they're watching Miss Rachel, even if they're watching that. Like, I love when Joanne said like a certain number of time, because you give them and they'll sit on the whole day and watch it because it's addictive. um but I also look at it from the perspective of giving parents some grace too, and giving moms some grace too. Because while I don't agree with it, I understand it. I don't agree with it, so I wouldn't do it. But a lot of times parents don't have the skills, they're at capacity. They stress, hey, it's hard for me and mother, rough, right? Especially if you have more than one, and then it's not, we don't have the kind of social support. We're juggling this, we're juggling that. Well, everything gone up. You have to work hard. Like, so things can be hard, and then we don't know that these things are as bad for children's brain as they are, right? And sometimes we don't have skills to deal with their emotions and to deal with certain things. So screen time is a big problem for me.
Mm.
Big problem, because I'm dealing with teenagers and adults who can't have conversations because they can only text, right? So again, it's the same question that I asked: Are we training our children now, or are we training them for the future? Like, children don't look in people's eyes and talk to them
Mm-hmm.
anymore. So when they turn adults, they can't look at people and have a conversation. They sit in the
Exactly.
job instead of having a conversation with their boss. Like, is it for now or in the future? So I think that it's detrimental, but I do think that there are advantages of using it when it's guided and when it's done in moderation. And the most important thing is that not just screen time for parents is a problem. Is not just sorry, screen time for children is a problem. Parental screen time is a problem too. So sometimes the children are addicted to screens because they see us on the screens all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's just like we are modeling this behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Every minute we're on our screen and they're learning it as well. So while I talk about screens are not good for children, my son will remind me when I tell him screen is not good for your brain. 2 seconds later, he'll come and tell me when I'm looking at my phone, Mommy, screen is not good for your brain,
Memory.
right? And it takes us away from bonding with our children too.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, that's a problem. Mhm.
Mrs. Jude, close us off
Yeah,
on that.
I am in total agreement with all of the points that have been made.
I need somebody to disagree.
And I am speaking not just as a parent and a grandparent, but I am in a school system. And I can
Mm.
tell you without any apologies that we have more problems because of the screen time than any benefits.
Yeah.
We have, right now, we have whole classrooms of kids who don't speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have entire classrooms, pre-Ks and Ks, with communication delays. And research is showing that it stems from the screen time that the kids have. Because remember, they're looking at Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel is talking. They're not interacting with Miss Rachel. All right? They're just looking at Miss Rachel. They're just looking at Coco Melon. They're just looking at Jack Hatman. But there is no back and forth communication. When we children of long ago, you tell them to talk, you give them vocabulary, say bye bye, say mommy, say dada. But right now they are looking, but they are not reciprocating. And so the school system where I am at, every year we are creating more and more classes of kids who need support. And a lot of what we're seeing is coming right back from the screen time. We have kids who will get a tantrum. I'm speaking from a personal experience. I work with autistic kids. As soon as the parents pick them up, they hand them a phone or they hand them a tablet. Now we have those what you call the polyphian boards, or it's like a big TV in your classroom. So we don't use chalk and talk. We don't use chalkboard. We use touch the screen and this and that. Now the day you put the screen off, I saw it with my own eyes. Kids were rolling on the floor, screaming. You would think I was beating up on them. Why? Because the screen was put off. So it's an addiction. And yes, there are advantages, but the research is showing that there's a lot more negative happening than positive with the children. It's delaying their development. It's preventing them from being able to even speak, as you said, Shoya, make eye contact. And a lot of those kids are even maybe being misdiagnosed for all you know, because we
Yeah.
have more and more autistic kids, and you're wondering, where is that autism coming from? Where is this thing coming from? It may not even, for all you know, it may not even be autism in the true sense. But they're displaying a lot of those symptoms of not being able to look at, not being able to communicate. They don't have expressive language. They don't have any of that. And then we have more problems in the school system, because instead of teaching them academics, you now have to focus on speech therapy and this and that, and even occupational therapy. Kids are falling over themselves because they're not in the habit of running around to play. So they have to be taught how to walk, how to run around, how to catch a ball. These are things that we used to do with children. Granted, there are those who are genuinely autistic, right? But then outside of the autism thing, we still see a lot of other disabilities that research is saying could possibly be coming from too much screen time. So yes, screen in moderation, and moderation to the max. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour is too long to be looking at a screen for a little child. Babies have nothing doing with screens, as I'm sure you said. So you have the kids are laying on their mat and they're looking at Coco Melon.
Yeah.
Another thing that we notice is that they're even talking like those characters. But those who speak, they speak like the characters that they keep looking at. And that cannot be a positive, So we have to do some work on that. Save the
So
children.
right. Very interesting, like as a mother to be, not to be anytime soon, but to be eventually. It's very interesting to hear the different perspectives. Like my mind is going 1,000 miles an hour. So I think my question I would ask to everyone here on the panel, well, not doing not in our story, but to all the mothers on the panel tonight, my question would be, based on what you know, what you've experienced, and how you were raised, what example, what would you raise your children? Like, what example from your own upbringing would you pass on to another young mother, or you implement in your own children's lives from your own upbringing? And we can start with Mrs. Weeks.
Okay. For me, a sense of responsibility. So children are never too young to learn that they have to take responsibility for certain things. The question of, yes, you play with your toys, but when you're finished with your toys, you need to take them and put them away. The question of, I give you your socks and your ribbons or whatever it is, and we have a laundry day. Even if we have a washing machine, but just having your own little basin, and you can spend the entire day washing your ribbons. You may say it's play, but it teaches you certain things. And gradually, I would encourage the children to learn to do things for themselves. So teach them how to make a simple sandwich for themselves. I would make sure that there are no sharp knives. Maybe we would use a plastic knife and help them so that they understand you can prepare simple things for yourselves. The whole concept of health, not always wanting juice, because Mommy Delia will not always give you juice. You've had juice already, you need to drink some water.
Right.
I am still old school, so we don't start the day with something cold on our chest. We drink something warm to wake the system up.
It's a hot tea, man.
No, 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 you need a little chauffeur chair.
Right.
Okay, so it's not your breakfast, but something warm to wake the system up gently. So it will aid your digestion because I am a firm believer in our food is our medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to break the stigma of, oh, bush tea is poor people's thing, or eating certain things has more status. I want to encourage people to retrain our children so that they eat nutritious food and not just junk.
Mm-hmm.
Not all the color loaded, color coded things that make it convenient for us. So you pack the snack bag with, if you look at the writings on the little things, they have so many long words that we cannot pronounce, but we're comfortable feeding it to our children.
Hmm.
And after a while, they forget about eating dachin and fig and tonton yampe and putting away the cutlery sometimes and eating with your fingers and licking your fingers to show that you really enjoyed the meal.
Hmm.
So yes, some of the things that would date me so that people would say, mm, she must be about that age. We still need to. I am proud of my age. I still encourage my children to do those sorts of things to remain grounded. So, in the event that you do not have access to all of the things that you want for yourself and your children, you can still make do with what is locally available and then still bring up sound minded, responsible, respectful children. Because a good name is better than riches.
Mm.
Hmm.
Thank you, Mrs. Week. Shmaya, what do you think? What example would you want to see Shayla and Ante implement in their own parenting based on how you were raised?
Um, so I have sisters who are like my best friends since the beginning of time, right? They didn't have a choice but to be my best friends. So I think one of the things that I would love for them to continue is like to understand the importance of community, support, the importance of bonding, right? So it's that thing, that new thing where everybody be myself and I and then kind
Yeah,
of
everybody want to be in a silo.
no,
Yep.
Right.
no, 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 this hyper independence, that is a whole trauma response, right? Like I want them to understand how life saving and how magical it can be to love another person and depend on another person and to have unity with another person, not enmeshment where you don't know where one person starts and the other one. No, no, no. But like good, healthy co-regulation, good, healthy support. So I think like my parents created a space where we could be best friends and where we could talk to each other about stuff and we could still, I still encourage my children to do that. When they have little issues, I say, hey, sort it out within yourselves. Talk to yourself,
Mm.
that's 2 and 5, but don't matter. Find some way to deal with that problem so that like they can learn the importance of each other, right? The other thing is, like, my mother was a calm mother. I want to be like I tell you, this is my calm parenting era. This is like I want to be a calm parent, right? You see this thing where after you finish with the child, you're tired, right? And you work up yourself, and you no, that is not for me.
Right. It's
Right?
very
I
important.
want to teach them you can be firm and you can be calm, right? So sometimes I want to shout at them and I'm just like, you know what? I need a little space. I need a little time. Mommy needs to breathe. And sometimes I
Mhm.
hear children saying it like, I'm so angry right now. I need a little time. I need to breathe, right? So I want them to understand that they can feel their feelings, but they don't have to be explosive. They don't have to, I want to be like calm and chill, to a place where I can be firm, but I can also regulate my own emotions so they can regulate their emotions.
Right.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
it's like it's those two things, community and actually community. Yeah, community and just being calm.
Okay.
Mm.
Like calm
Right.
parent error.
Parent error.
What about
All
you,
right.
Natalie? Well, Natalie, you have to
Yes.
give a bit in the short time. You have to give us a two-part answer because you're a parent and a grandparent. So, what example would you want them to pass on, or have you seen them pass on, which is interesting?
Let me log off now. Let me.
Well, one of the things that I would like my children and my grandchildren to keep practicing and keep building is to respect for adults, respect for your elders. I learned that as a child. And the younger generation doesn't always see it that way. So you'll hear people say, sure, she disrespect me, I can disrespect her back. But I don't subscribe to that. I taught my children that even when the adult is wrong, by virtue of the fact that it's an adult, that doesn't mean you don't have to respond, but you still have to respond in a respectful way. You still have to extend respect to that person. Um, I was saying to somebody not too long ago, I am an adult. I have lived more of my life than what I probably have remaining to live. But if I am at my mother's house, I'm at my father's house, and they say something to me that has upset me, you will not hear me in a back and forth with them. The most I might say, I will tell you that I don't like what you said to me. I don't, I don't subscribe to it, but I will not go in I hear people cussing up their parents and as if, it's a war going on. So I would like my children to respect adults, respect people,
All right.
right? Respect yourself and respect people. The second thing, I would like them to continue to be very helpful and compassionate. And I have seen a lot of that in my children. Sometimes you'll hear them say, oh, they is not there to always help people. They will, and one of the things I say is there are two groups of people on earth. Some are givers and some are receivers. If somebody is a receiver, you will never make them a giver. And if somebody is a giver, no matter how hard you try, you will never become a receiver because this is what you were blessed with. So I would want my children to continue being helpful, look for opportunities to bless people, look for opportunities to help people, contribute to society, contribute to other people. Because it's not so much, I think Barack Obama said it and it stays with me. It's not so much what is in your bank account, it's how many lives you can influence, how many lives you can bless, how many people you can, put in a better position. If God has blessed you, you have to bless others. So those are the two things I would want my children and my grandchildren to continue to be respectful of other people, and also to be compassionate and as helpful as they possibly can.
Thank you. And Joanne, what about you?
So I think when I heard the question, I instantly thought about my grandmom who raised me. And I think two things that keeps me going that she passed on to me. My grandmom didn't really have a higher education, so she couldn't really help me in that aspect. But I think every time I have the vision of my grandmom, I remember waking up 6 o'clock every Sunday to go to church. And I don't go every Sundays. I know Mrs. Jude will be very disappointed. I don't go every Sundays, but what I try to do is take my son at least twice out of the out of the 4 Sundays, or whether they're 5 Sundays, because I want him to have that foundation, because that foundation is extremely important. And the thing about it is that I know what it does for me today. I know what it did for me before, and I know what it will do for me tomorrow. Because I get down on my knees and pray. So the thing about it, growing up in Dominica, we were taught to pray in schools. We knew the Lord's Prayer, we knew Psalms 23. Here, they don't pray in schools. So I taught him the Lord prayers, the Lord Prayer. We are learning Psalms 23. And then he also has the church foundation where he's involved in Sunday school and everything. So I'll have to say
Mm,
faith. That's extremely, extremely, extremely important to me. And
right.
sadly, I don't really see people going to church like we used to in the past.
Mm,
Mm.
But it's extremely important. So the faith has to do definitely the responsibility. So no, yes, the washing machine washes the clothes. You have to fold the clothes. You need to pack your
mm,
and do it. Because I feel all of that this is life skills.
right.
So yes, so the faith, and the responsibilities.
Period.
Elena,
And
I just wanted to quickly add. Joanne mentioned her grandmother, and
mm,
it just popped in my head that although growing up, we did not see my mother as a philanthropist. But when you look back on it, my
mm-hmm.
mother is the philanthropist. You
Right.
know, because you're wondering where did you take that habit of always wanting to help somebody, always wanting to do something for somebody. And the
Mm-hmm.
good thing about it is that my mother was never loud about it. Some of the people in the community that she has been helping, we only found out about it as we became adults, but she
Right.
was never loud about it. But I go back to, she was always giving you a little bowl of food to bring for somebody, a short in, an elderly person, bring that for Majefa, bring that for this one, bring that for that one.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, we did not, well, I did not see it as she being a philanthropist. But come to think of it, when you go back, even when you go home now and people talk to you about your mother, you know, I like your mother this, your mother that, then
Mm-hmm.
you find out what your mother was doing, and
Mm-hmm.
indirectly it has impacted us, it has
Mm-hmm.
impacted me. And so this is something that I would like my children to really
Right. And I always
continue.
say on that point as well, I always say my parents, both of my parents, set up my blessings for me in advance, because sometimes you're somewhere, let's say inland revenue, and you're in a bind, you don't have your ID or something. And the most random person will say, yes, I know her, she's Ellen Commodore for real. And it's only after you find out. One time my father give them a ride to go marry God, or they didn't have something and my mother pay, and you just find in, okay, thank you. But it's like, when you have mothers like this and parents like this, they're setting up your blessings for you so far in advance that you have no idea about. So thank you guys so much, doing.
Yeah, I really want to thank you guys. I think we could keep talking for another
I
five
know,
hours.
right?
I mean, there's so much stuff to cover in terms of motherhood and parenting and a whole. But um, I want to give you guys your flowers,
For
and
sure.
I'm big on that, right? I think, we tend to wait until people pass away or they get sick, and it sounds cliche every time people say that, but anybody in my family will tell you that. I always telling people that. I don't want nobody to come to my funeral if he wasn't coming and see me while I alive. I'm
Right.
dead serious, and I'm saying it now for the whole world to see. If you didn't care about me, I don't want you coming to my funeral. And when
Right.
you have people that are good in your life and people that are positive in your life and helpful, and you need to, tell them that. And I want to give you guys your flowers because I am not a mother, obviously, but I always tell my friends and them, I'm so happy I'm not a woman because to be honest, I mean, I think women have to go through so much, so much, and I really, and when I see a woman who, who's a working mother, who's also running a house and kids, and everything that comes with that, and then even women who don't have that, women who are single mothers, right, and they're not getting the help that they should get from the people that should be giving them the help, right? Those things are um, things that I think over the years we've taken for granted, right?
Right.
When you look at, a lot of moms, like, again, he's a celebrity, but I always tell people, if you look at like LeBron James, right? Like LeBron James' mom raised him, right? Now think of the guy who is LeBron James' dad. How embarrassing it must be to see this guy, how he is now, right? To know that I'm that kid's father and I had nothing to do with it. Like, no matter what he'll
Right.
say, right? I don't know what his relationship was, but he did not contribute really to get LeBron to where he is. And I always think that sometimes the best people you see coming into society are the people from single parent homes,
Yep.
especially
Yeah,
single
all the
moms.
time.
So, I want to give, the mothers out there your flowers while you're alive, and and kicking. And I want to tell the mothers to keep pushing, right? Keep working hard. You might not see it now, especially when you have small kids. You might get frustrated and all that stuff. But this is my mother here, Napoli June. And I always tell people, I remember growing up with my mom. I mean, my sister is 6 or 7 years younger than me. So for a little while, I was my mother's only kid. And I remember conversations I had with my mother when I was 5. I never forget those conversations. And that still impacts my life today, 30 plus years later. Right. So I always tell people, respect women, respect mothers, shout out to the mothers out there. I can't say it enough. And I want to thank the ladies on here again for coming on the show. I'm not gonna say that I want this to be the only episode because I feel like we have so much
We
stuff
have
to
a
cover.
lot more to cover. I
And
think so.
maybe we should not just make it a Mother's Day thing. We could do another, episode. We could come on and address certain things and talk about certain
Of
things.
course.
But again, thank you guys for coming on. Thank you, Mrs. Napoli Jude. Thank you, Mrs. Deal at Coffee Weeks. Thank you, Joan Laura. Mrs. Joan Laura, sorry. And thank you, Mrs. Shoya, gay grand mascot.
Yes.
All
Of
right.
course. And one last thing before we go, Dwayne, again, happy Mother's Day to all mothers viewing. And of course, to those who may not have a physical mother here with us, or whether it's a grandmother or whatever maternal figure in your life, we pray that you have a good day. And even if your mother is not here, we say a silent prayer for her. And we just hope that all of you have a blessed day. And of course, I echo Dwayne's sentiments. Thank you all for coming on. Really appreciate it. Very insightful conversation. I have a lot of thinking to do as a soon to be, but not so soon to be mother.
Can you say that, plenty people?
One more thing. While we're giving Mother's Day greetings, I would love to give a shout out to all the mothers who are struggling, like
Right.
mental health wise, who don't feel good about themselves, who feel overwhelmed, who can't bother, right? Who can't find balance. I don't know what is balance. This is crazy. Joanne, have you been able to find balance? When you find it, hook me up, please. Right? But like motherhood can be really, really hard, and not everybody feels good on Mother's Day, even if you're a mother, because it can be overwhelming. Sometimes you think that you're not doing anything right. Sometimes it can be a mess. So even if you feel like you're not doing good right now, even if you're struggling, you're still good inside, right? You're still doing the best you can, and happy Mother's Day to you.
Cannot say it any better than
I actually thought that we were going to be told you have a closing thought.
Because anyway, it was
Give me do your closing thought, please.
I'd already prepared my closing thought.
the floor is yours. The floor is yours.
I'd already prepared my closing thought. And so I'm going to say, I wanted to also say happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And I would want you to remember, us to remember that self-care is not an option. You cannot pour out of an empty cup.
Right.
Self-care is not an option. And that is something, Shoya spoke about the balance. This is something that from way back when I had my children, I promised myself 24 hours in the day, 1 hour is for me. Some way, somehow.
I'm taking that.
An hour is for me. I remember, and part of my hour can be I want to watch a show. My hour can be I need to go for a walk. My hour can be I enter the bathroom and I pull out a magazine and I sit in there doing nothing except reading. I remember my youngest child, my last child, one time he said, "Mommy, so long you in the toilet." As far as he was concerned, I was not doing anything. I'm just inside there. But I needed that, there was other people in the house to watch those children, right? I need a break. So self-care is not an option. No matter what you do, you have to take care of yourself. Because if you're not well, you cannot give back to your children as well, or to your family. You cannot give back to society. So that would be my closing thought. Self-care is not an option.
Love that.
All right. Since you
Can I
start
piggyback on
the
this,
trend,
please?
yeah, go ahead. Since you start the trend, Mrs. Dillon, you can go ahead.
Yes. So although in the Caribbean we like to say that women are big stone, women are a place of safety, but women, as Natalie said, also need a place where they can be safe. And yes, we need to make time for ourselves. The people who have women in their lives, be it a mother figure, an aunt, a sister, appreciate them
Mm.
because we do not know how much time we have left with them.
Clock it.
And I will say to all women, mothers, stepmothers, grandmothers, godmothers, potential mothers, you matter.
Mm.
You matter. Do not let anybody make you feel less than
Mhm.
because the Father knows that you are here for a reason. So, especially on that day that is set aside to appreciate mothers, take a good, long, hard look at yourself in the mirror and truly say to yourself, I am here for a reason. I am wonderful and I deserve the very best.
Mhm.
Happy Mother's Day to all of you.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else
Mrs.
have any
Banks?
closing
Anything?
So,
words?
so for mine, it's pretty simple. You got this.
Period. I like that one.
I should call
You
it
got
period
this.
days.
Um, for mine, uh, what I would say, like, you can't do everything.
Mm.
You can't do everything. Okay? Like,
Right.
there should be no shame in needing help. Whether it's mental health, whether it's hiring somebody to clean your house sometimes, right? Whether it's like we feel like we need to be able to do it all. And if we can't do it all, we feel less than, and all of those kind of things. Like, you are valuable. We are valuable just because we exist, just because we're moms, and we don't have nothing to prove to nobody. So if you need a little help, if you need a little break, take it. You cannot do it all. And if you are trying to do better than what was done for you, you already put your children at an advantage.
Mm.
Job. Happy Mother's Day to us, to we. Yeah.
All right.
All right, everyone. Please like, subscribe, follow the page.
On YouTube.
We're gonna have the merch coming out. We keep saying soon and very soon and soon and soon, but when it come out, everybody will be happy to see it. Thanks
Right.
everybody for tuning in
Thank
and
you so much.
share the video. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.